of thinking that the goal is to survive, to blind out, to hang around and hope for the best. But in reality, if you do that, you're going to have a very, very, very difficult time winning in the long run because you are not going to ever accumulate a whole bunch of chips. And the way you actually win at poker tournaments is to get a hold of chips and abuse every single spot where there are payout implications. You do not win by being a medium stack. You do not win by being a short stack. You win by having a boatload of chips. I've been traveling recently, so let me just make sure everything is working properly here. I think it is. I think it is. If you all can hear me and we're live, say hello, we're live. If you can't hear me, then I guess we won't say anything now, will you? You play rebuy tournaments and leverage your roll by jamming any two until you run up a deep stack. Probably not a good strategy. That strategy used to work whenever you knew your table would not break anytime in the near future, but that's not the world we live in. All right. So first things first, let's talk about my World Series of Poker. I just returned from Las Vegas a few days ago. I was there for the last third of the World Series of Poker, and it went well enough. I arrived, very first tournament I played a $10,000 turbo bounty tournament, and my turbo bounty skills are apparently top-notch. I took 12th place, and in that tournament, I actually ran up a deep stack. How did I run up a deep stack early in a turbo tournament? Well, it's important to realize that when you're playing a bounty tournament, at least a decent chunk of your value will come from collecting bounties, right? And if you cannot collect bounties, then you're going to lose a lot of equity in that tournament. There is infinite value, or at least a lot of value, in having a deep stack, especially in bounty tournaments. So you need to get in there and you need to play some pots. The easiest way to get a hold of some chips early in a tournament is to splash around a little bit, see what develops. And if you flop some sort of decently strong hand, like a set or a straight or two pair or a flush or whatever, and your opponent has a hand like top pair, top kicker, or aces, you can end up playing a very big pot. Also, especially in games where you are disproportionately rewarded for having a big stack, such as in a bounty tournament or a progressive bounty tournament, etc., you should not shy away from all-in confrontations if they make sense, if they're roughly 50-50, right? And actually, early in that bounty tournament, I got it all in with jacks against ace king, and I won. I say it was early. It was probably for 1.5 starting stacks or something like that, a few hours into the tournament, where I had something like 45 big blinds. I raised from middle position, button 3-bet me, I ripped it in. Nice normal spot to rip it in. I mean, I'm ripping it in there every time with jacks. If you look at GTO pre-flop charts, they say to rip it in with jacks. And I did that, right? I'm not shying away from variance in that scenario. If you gave me a slightly weaker hand, maybe I would have ripped it in these bounty tournaments because you don't really mind getting all your money in. Also, in that scenario, my opponent covered me by about almost no chips when they covered me. So they could actually collect my bounty, which means they have to call off a little bit wider. Now, I will say that in regular bounty tournaments where they are not progressive, the bounties are usually not all that relevant once you get to the middle or late stages of the tournament, but you should still account for them. It definitely differs a lot in progressive bounty tournaments where the bounty stays very relevant throughout the entire tournament. So anyway, I shoved, he called with ace king, I won the flip. Now all of a sudden we have 2.5 starting stacks, or 3 starting stacks when everybody else has 1.25, and now we're in very good shape, right? So I use that to play a lot of pots, run over the opponents, and get a hold of a lot of chips. Is the chair moving? Chair's moving a little bit. I can move the chair manually with my leg. Look at that, the marvel of science. Hyper this morning. Whenever I get back home after the World Series of Poker for a nice, long, full week of work, I am ready to go. We have a poker coaching webinar happening right after the show, so if you're a poker coaching member, make sure you get in that. I also just listed a bunch of action, well, some action, on pocket5s.com. You can sell action for tournaments on there. Actually, some of it's getting close to sold out already. I listed it 10 minutes ago. I'm selling action for a $5,000 main event, a $10,000 side event, a $25,000 event, and a $50,000 event. $10,000 event's almost halfway sold out already. We capped some of them at like a $10 maximum purchase, so you can't actually buy all that much. So anyway, check that out at Pocket Fives. I'll post the link in the chat here. staking.pocketfives.com/staking/series/19. Yeah, figure that one out. Anyway, you can click there. You can see me. Josh Aria is selling a little bit of action too. I'm selling it no markup for the fans. It's for you. Do that for all of you. You all tell me you want to buy some action. There's your chance to get a little bit of action. Can't sell a ton of action because I gotta be able to, gotta be playing for something, you know. But I'm happy to sell a little bit of action in these tournaments. They'll also add day 1A second entry, day 1B second entry, etc. for the main event at some point as well, if you feel like getting in the action. All right. So in that tournament, I also had another flip. I took 2 flips and I won both. 2 for 2 on flips for big flips. And both times I didn't collect the bounty from the big flips, which was unfortunate, but such is life. And that was a lot of fun. And that allowed me to continue to collect bounties throughout the tournament. Later, I lost 2 flips in a row, and I lost 2 80-20s in a row, and that put me down to a short stack. Now, when you're a short stack or a medium stack in a tournament, it's a little bit unfortunate. You're going to hang around and try to find an advantageous spot. You don't really get to push people around so much anymore whenever you have a short or a medium stack. You're going to have to catch some cards. You're going to have to win some hands. Now, certainly, you may be able to, you know, shove a little bit wide here and there and pick up some pots that perhaps don't belong to you, but you're not going to be able to just like really relentlessly run over people late in a tournament with a short or a medium stack. So you just kind of have to hang out and hope for something good. I found something good. The Queen 8 suited on the button for 7 big blinds in that turbo tournament. The average stack was something like 12 big blinds at that point. I had 7. So a little bit more than half of average. But, you know, still not in bad shape. I shoved the Queen 8 suited. Somebody called with the King Jack offsuit, I think. It was a good call. And I lost. Lost 4 or 5 hands in a row. You lose 4 or 5 all-ins in a row, you're going to lose. Such is life. TP says, first time catching me live. Hello. You just built a bankroll playing at Hard Rock in Bristol, Virginia. Congrats. Now you get to travel only 20 minutes to play. Good job, good work. Why did you crop at 10%? I don't know what why did you crop at 10% means. I have no clue what that means. Negreanu finished down over $1 million. You got to understand that whenever you're playing $250,000 buy-in tournaments and $100,000 buy-in tournaments, $1 million is not all that much money. Believe it or not. If you look at a lot of the players who play these super high roller tournaments on a very regular basis, they're swinging $5 or $10 million a year, standard. You have to realize that poker is all about buy-ins invested in return on investment. Now, certainly, I'm sure Negreanu had a very poor return on investment this World Series. It's going to happen. But I'm sure it's not nearly as bad as a lot of people think. $1 million, oh my God. It's like normal swing, not even a big swing. I mean, I've been down like 500K twice in my career from tournaments, and I don't even play that big. So, you know, 500K for me was what? It was like 70 buy-ins, I think, at that point. I was playing pretty big, but, you know, 70 buy-ins, it happens. Get used to it. It's normal. You play a lot, you're going to inevitably go on decently big downswings. Don't worry about that. Oh, why did I cap the $5,000 main event at $10 pieces? So a lot of people could get some action. It's not all about you buying all the action for no markup. I'm not just trying to give you all my action for fun. Come on, everybody. We're spreading the wealth here. You realize we do this for all of you. All of you. Not one person who wants to gobble up the action and take the value and then resell it. Come on, everybody. Get real. And if it's not big enough for you, then go find something else to do. You can buy the 50K action any amount you want. You can buy the 25K action any amount you want. Maybe even the 10K. I don't remember what I told him about the 10K. So anyway, there you go. All right. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So that was that tournament. Got a decent stack. Ran it up. Collected a bunch of bounties. Cashed for 40-something thousand right off the bat. Lost 4 hands in a row. Lost. Fine. Nice, easy tournament. And a bunch of the other tournaments, I did not run it up. When I say a bunch of the other tournaments, I didn't really play that many tournaments. I think I played 8 tournaments, got 2 cashes, which is fine. Not that cashes are what you're going for, but it's fine. I played 6 online tournaments, cashed 2 of those as well. Fine, you know. Unfortunately, there I lost the big ones and cashed the small ones. In the live ones, though, I cashed a 10K and a 50K, and I lost the small one, so that worked out. Again, there's just a lot of variance in these games, right? Like, for example, I played online and lost, like, I don't even know, $15,000, and cashed 33% of my games. I actually made kind of deep run in one of them. I think I cashed for like 4K in one of the 1Ks or something like that. And you lose. And the live poker tournaments, I played 8 tournaments, cashed 2 big ones, won $50,000. It's variance. You don't get to choose when you win. People saying, "Oh my God, Negreanu's down $1 million." Well, it turns out here he fired twice into 250K, right? Fired twice and he two buy-ins. He lost 2 buy-ins. Give the guy a break. You ever lost 2 buy-ins in a row, everybody? You ever lost 2 buy-ins in a row? All right. So in the other tournaments, I mean, to be fair, I usually play a relatively similar strategy. That is to show up and see what the table will give me. Some tables will give you a lot. Some tables will not give you much of anything. As you play in tougher and tougher opponents, your opponents will inevitably give you less and less and less. So you have to play closer to GTO poker, which is what you have to do in the highest stakes games. Now, I will say, in this particular $50,000 buy-in tournament, I showed up, I got seated at a table where I had never seen 6 out of the 7 people at my table. How does that happen? I don't know. Later, Jason Mercier came to the table. He's like, "Wow, this is like a different world." I was sitting at my table, and I actually thought, when they put me at my table, am I in the wrong tournament? I know that sounds a little bit egotistical, but it's like, I didn't know any of these players. I sat down. They're playing every pot. They're raising, 3-betting, limping, whatever. And I'm just sitting here like, this is a $50,000 buy-in tournament, and I actually think I might be in like the 500 or something. But no, I was in the 50K. And I got a bunch of chips. Actually, in that tournament, it was kind of unfortunate for me because I would chip up nice and slow and consistent and then lose a flip. Chip up nice and slow and consistent. I think I lost 4 flips in a row in that tournament. But I still got a cash, which is good. I had a spot where we were down to maybe 30 people in the tournament, and I think 16 paid. And I got in a big flip against one of the good kids. Oh, which one was it? Which one was it? My memory's no good. I got in a big flip. I had queens against ace-king, and I lost. And that was for like 8 starting stacks or something, like a pretty good chunk, right? And if I win that hand, I have all the chips going into the bubble, and I would have been fine. Instead, I was down to 2 starting stacks and had to tread water and collect a free min cash, which I did. So that's how you go about winning tournaments, is actually not being afraid to get in spots, right? I mean, Dominic says it right here, you chipped up so you were able to lose flips. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You chip up so you're able to lose the flips. And if you win the flip, you have all the chips, and then you win the tournament. I've actually been a little bit unlucky in various high roller tournaments where I've had that progression happen quite a few times, where it's like chip up, have 8 or 9 starting stacks, lose a flip for 5 or 6 of them, and then hang out, collect a min cash, and hopefully spin it up, but don't spin it up. I mean, in this one, I got in the money, immediately got in a flip with 2s against ace queen, and I lost. So I lost. Such is life, you know? Can't worry about it. So the way to chip up is to win flips. No, that is the way to get all the chips and crush the tournament. You do have to win your flips to win poker tournaments, believe it or not. You're going to have to win more than your fair share of hands to get all of the chips in a poker tournament. Who'd have thought you got to run a little bit lucky? Did you think it was completely, entirely 100% skill every single time? Come on, everybody. Don't be ridiculous. The way you chip up is by winning pots that don't belong to you. Poker, at the end of the day, is all about equity realization. How much of the equity that you own do you actually collect? If you collect more equity than your opponents, or you essentially don't let them realize their equity, you're going to win in the long run. So it's really easy to drastically over-realize your equity whenever you are playing as the deeper stack in the tournament against shallower stacks in the tournament, especially when there are payout implications. Okay? So when there are payout implications, you get to apply a decent amount of pressure to your opponents. You get to play more than your fair share of pots. You get to raise a little bit more. You get to 3-bet a little bit more. You get to shove them a little bit more. George Bush donated me $1 Canadian. Thank you. Next time I go to Canada, I'm going to buy something from Canada with it. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of the support, by the way. I will say, look, there's a lot of content creators out there who could definitely use your support. So I appreciate the support. Make sure you support all the other content creators out there as well. What was I talking about? Got sidetracked by Canadian dollar. Feel free to give all the Canadian dollars if you'd like. Okay. You get a big stack, and then you run over the opponents. How do you get the big stack to begin with? You play a lot of pots, you make some hands, you win some chips that don't belong to you. Maybe you find spots where you have a lot of the nuts, and your opponents have no nuts in their range, and you just like make big river bets. A very common spot that comes up is, let's say, under the gun raises, you call the big blind, flop comes 6, 4, 3, okay? You have a lot of these small cards, they don't. You check, they check, as they often should. Turn is a 5. So board is now 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay? They have almost no 7s and almost no 2s. You have a lot of 7s and a lot of 2s. Very common spot in GTO world to bet small on the turn and then blast the river. This is your pot. You win it a lot. You're going to drastically over-realize your equity with everything in your range. Maybe not. That might be an oversimplification. But you're going to win this pot a ton because you have a lot of nuts and they have almost none. There are a lot of spots that come up very, very frequently where you have a lot of nuts and your opponent has none. And when you have a lot of nuts, you get to blast the river and win the pot very, very frequently. Now, sometimes they're going to have the nuts and you're going to lose. And that's okay. But this is your pot the vast majority of the time, and you have to be willing to take it. What a lot of people do wrong is they have something like, say they have ace 5 on 6, 5, 4, 3, and you check the turn and they check, and you check the river and they check, and they win with their 5. And that's a spot where that is just your pot. So you want to look for spots like that where you just get to win the pot a large chunk of the time. You want to really leverage when you have the range/nut advantage and apply a lot of pressure. We discuss this thoroughly at pokercoaching.com in the tournament masterclass. We also discuss it in the cash game masterclass. And that is very, very beneficial. So you have to be willing to splash around early in tournaments, see a lot of flops, try to make the nuts, be quick to get out of the way when you don't make the nuts. Find a lot of spots where your opponents are making egregious errors. A spot where people used to make a lot of egregious errors was right on the flop. You would raise, they would call, the flop would come, you'd continuation bet, they would fold 2/3 of the time. Maybe 60% of the time. Well, obviously, you're going to print money whenever they're folding the flop 60% of the time because they need to defend 70%. They need to call 70%, but they're folding 60%, right? So that's an easy one where you can just run your opponents over. Also, people sometimes just fold to 3 bets too often, or fold to 4 bets too often, or fold to small continuation bets too often. Because you got to realize, whenever you continuation bet small, like 20% pot, they need to call a ton, and they just won't. They can't very often, especially if they are out of position. They're going to realize their equity very, very poorly. So if they're going to realize their equity poorly, you in turn get to push them around. What are my career earnings? What events have I won? There's this website. It's a really good one. It's called Google. You can Google any person's name and the word poker. It'll bring it right up. Now, to be fair, perhaps Jonathan Little has done such a good job at SEO that the Hendon Mob or the GPI is not the first site to come up. There's actually 2 sites. They're the same company. One is called GPI, stands for Global Poker Index. You can go there, type in any poker player's name. It'll bring you up all their stats. Or Hendon Mob, it does the same thing. All right. Do you bluff? Do the bluff to value ratios differ on the flop at different stack depths? Yeah, you get to bluff a little bit more as you're deeper stacked in general because you're less likely to go to the showdown. Is this a Herman Miller chair? Yes, this is. I've had this chair for 15 years. I should probably get a new one. Maybe not 15. I don't know when I got this chair. I've had this chair a very long time. I think I had it when I lived in Vegas. Or maybe I got a new one. I don't know. How do I like it? I don't know. I'm sure there's something better for me. I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Any tips to keep your mind on things that are different from live from online? I mean, make sure you know how many chips people have. That's important. If you enjoy this show, click the like button, click the subscribe button. Marlon says you cashed for $12K last night. Good job, good work. Can't you just say your winnings? No, you want to know why? Because I'm going to teach you a life skill. It's important to learn life skills. Something I try to teach people are skills that will help them be much more efficient at life and not waste people's time. There's a lot of value in not wasting people's time. Realize here, we're sitting here with 300-something people watching right now, bright and early in the morning, and you're asking me to consult Google for you. Let's get back to the topic of the day. How to chip up in tournaments. Okay. You really want to maximize fold equity. You want to maximize fold equity. So when you're the big stack, at any point in time, your opponents have to be a little bit tighter as you get later and later in the tournaments because they don't want to go broke. If they go broke, they lose all future earning potential in the tournament. And if they double up, they don't win double their equity, right? Very, very common spot. So this is a situation where you need to be calling a lot in position, 3-betting a lot in position, more than the GTO charts recommend, especially if they are playing a little bit loose, a little bit too aggressively. And that's going to allow you to over-realize your equity because you're in position in a spot where your opponent has to overfold, right? That's going to go a long way to allowing you to slowly chip up because they just have to check and fold a decent amount of the time, right? So, in these scenarios, you want to make sure that you play in position a lot. I'm acting like a pyramid scheme. If you ask other people, they brag about their winnings, no problem. Yeah, you gotta realize my goal's not here. No, I'm not here to brag and toot my own horn. I'm here to help all of you improve your skills. Very, very different strategy, right? We're here to educate people. All right, not brag about my success and other people's successes. Certainly we have a slide about that in our 40 slide long webinars. Every once in a while we'll say, hello, we'll introduce ourselves in case you all are new here. My job is not to sit here and tell you how great I am and how many people I know and celebrities I hang out with. That's not what we're going for here, okay? You want that, go to all the other nonsense on YouTube. Have fun, enjoy yourself. Everything's not for everyone. This is not a hype show. This is an educational show. All you have to do to win in tournaments is win the last hand you play. Indeed, that is correct. All right, next. Look for spots where there are immense payout implications and really lean on the opponents. For example, the bubble, right? On the bubble, your opponents have to be really tight. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of not caring about the bubble. I'm going to give you an example of this. I'm not going to out the player because I think he plays well most of the time, but I think he played this hand overly aggressively. On the bubble with a $50,000 buy-in tournament. Big stack raised. He was a medium stack. He 3-bet with kings. Perfectly fine and standard. You're happy to play with the kings pre-flop. On the bubble of the $50,000 buy-in tournament. Okay? Gets back around to the big stack calls. Flop comes. I think it was like 10-8-6. 10-8-6. I think that's right. Opponent checked. He continuation bets. Right off the bat, on the bubble, with a solid medium stack of like 40 or 50 big blinds, I don't think you're supposed to continuation bet. If you do continuation bet like he did, and he got called, the turn was a 2 or something, the opponent checked, he bet again. I think you cannot bet again in this scenario on the bubble as a medium stack. You cannot do it. Now, that's going to result in you winning more tournaments, right? But this is a spot where your opponent is going to have all the sets in their range, maybe even straights for all I know. And that's not a good spot for you. If you get check shoved here, it is miserably bad, even with kings on the 10-8-6-2 board, right? Because even if, like when they're drawing to a hand that beats you, even if they have like ace-10 or something, they have 5 outs. Not that 5 outs is a lot, but it is some, right? And the thing is you're going to be really, really close to dead sometimes, and it's a disaster to be really close to dead on the bubble. Also, this big stack is a more tame big stack. He's a very strong world-class player, but he's not one of these like insane 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet players. He's more of the small ball type player. And he got check shoved on the turn, and he snapped it off with the kings. And he was against pocket sixes for a set, and then he was just out. And I got to collect the bubble money for free. But that's a spot where you have to make sure that you lean on people on the bubble, but you don't overplay your spots on the bubble. Now, even as a big stack, imagine the situations were reversed. That's a scenario where maybe the big stack shouldn't even be betting with the kings, because if they get check shoved, it's also terrible. And you have to realize in scenarios like that, one of the two players is highly incentivized to not play. And if, well, that's you, you're really wanting to play small and medium pots, right? So you want to make sure that you are essentially using small and medium amounts of aggression. And when you do get all of your money in, you want to be sure that you have either the best hand or the best draw, or a draw with a lot of equity. And you have to be a little bit careful getting it in with what are essentially bluff catchers. because even even though you have equity, very often if you're against a polarized range, which you should be, sometimes you're just going to be dead, and sometimes you're going to have 60, 70%, but very rarely are you going to be in a spot where you have like 100%. If you've been shoved on preflop, should you call with the kings? Yeah, you don't fold kings in that scenario preflop because a lot of ace-x will shove you. If you look at ICM adjusted preflop charts, which will be coming to pokercoaching.com sometime in the near future, by the way, look forward to those. Ace-x gets after it a bit. So if the big stack raises like, I don't know, ace 5 suited, somebody 3-bets, ace 5 suited can just rip it in frequently on the bubble for 40 or 50 big blinds because it has a blocker to the calling range, right? So that's the spot where they get to jam a ton, and yeah, king's is going to call off, but you don't even love it because if you lose, you bubble, right? Louis Philippe in the chat says, when big stacks collide in ICM scenarios, Bert Stevens, world-class crusher, one of the biggest winners online, likes to check a lot to control the pot. Yeah, whenever you're a big stack against another big stack, or even a medium stack against a big stack, you just don't want to get all in. That is not how you win the tournament. That's how you end up bubbling. To be fair, it might actually be how you win the tournament, but it's how you lose a lot of equity. So anyway, that's important. Later in the tournament, when you get near other payout spots that are relevant or near a final table, right? Those are scenarios where you can also just play a little bit wider as the big stack. Or if the big stack is folded and you are now effectively the big stack in the hand, you can play a little bit wider. And if the big stack is also not so aggressive, you can play a little bit wider. Funny enough, in the $50,000 buy-in tournament that I ended up cashing the other day, two of the medium stacks were going at it. I was kind of surprised. Like, the big stack was just sitting there. I was just sitting there as the short stack. And two of the medium stacks were going nuts. They were raising, 3-betting every hand. They both had 40 or 50 big blinds. And like, what are these guys doing? One of them's going to go broke. I was shocked. And sure enough, one of them ended up going broke. Who'd have thought? And the thing is, it's like, if there were no payout implications, their play is probably fine, because that's how you end up getting a lot of chips, right? Not that they're necessarily going to be flipping with each other. Obviously, they're picking up a lot of dead money along the way because they raise and they play more pots than me or the other players at the table, and that's going to result in them chopping the blinds and antes on average, which is fine and good. Like, imagine they knew they were going to be flipping for 10 big blinds every hand, but every pot had 22 big blinds in it, right? They put in 10, the opponent puts in 10, then there's 2 additional in the pot from the blinds and the antes. Well, you do that all day and you're just going to win a ton of money. And that's essentially what they're trying to do. The problem, though, is that on the bubble, you can't get away with that because there's a lot of value in not getting broke, and you will get broke sometimes, especially when you're flipping for a pot that's on average 20 big blinds, but sometimes it's 100 and sometimes it's 3, right? How do you learn to multi-table? Practice. Turns out practice is good for a lot of things. Multi-tabling is just purely I don't even know what the right word is, a skill for muscle memory and whatnot. And you essentially need to practice. So let's say you normally play 2 tables. Start playing 4, but play for way smaller stakes, right? And then once you can get good at 4, play 5. And once you're good at 5, play 6. Play for tiny stakes. Just get used to thinking about how to play poker well and making those decisions. And then do that over and over and over again. Doyle Brunson said, I'm only losing the chips I already won off of you. Yeah. That's power poker and Super System from back in the day, where Doyle would win all the small pots and then get it all in with 30%. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. He doesn't care because he grinded up so much chips from so many chips from fold equity that he's crushing his opponents. He essentially did not let his opponents realize their equity. Who'd have thought? Doyle Brunson had it right a long time ago. Don't let the opponents realize their equity. Use hotkeys for multi-tabling. I've actually never used my keyboard for multi-tabling beyond typing in chips. I don't use any of the hotkeys. I'm paranoid I will misclick doing that. If you're playing a lot of tables, like 20, I usually just cascade them across the screen, and I'll put the biggest relevant ones in the top corner. So I'll have 2 or 3 in the top right-hand corner, 20 or so cascaded down across the table, or down across the screen, and they'll auto-pop up, and you can keep tabs on what's happening pretty easily, and you can play quickly. I do use Hold'em Manager when I play, if the site allows it, and that will let you be able to quickly get reads on people. I have a heads-up display. It's a simple one, but I think it's really all you need. It's on Poker Coaching. You can, I think it's in the tools section. You can get that for free. I mean, it's the settings. It's not the actual heads-up display. It's the settings for the heads-up display that you can input into Hold, Manage, or Poker Tracker. And that's what I use whenever I'm playing on a site that allows it, and it'll give me a very, very quick snapshot on if the player is overly loose, aggressive, etc., etc., and it's good to go. Use a gaming mouse. I use this kind of mouse. It's a trackball mouse. It cured my horrible carpal tunnel syndrome that plagues a lot of poker players. A lot of poker players use this mouse now. You put your thumb on it, and you do like this. It has these buttons. I don't ever use these buttons. I use literally the left click button and the right click button, and that's it. So, that's that. What else? How else do you go about chipping up in tournaments? Really, there's not a lot to it beyond play a little bit loose, a little bit aggressive, and try to make premium hands when your opponents are very often making marginal hands. That's it. That's it. Play hands that make the nuts. Don't play the Queen 9 offsuit for middle position, right? Play good, strong, fundamentally sound ranges. Maybe err towards the suited hands. Maybe err away from the offsuit hands. I don't really 3-bet as much as GTO charts recommend before the flop early in a tournament. I realize that will cost me lots of small pots, but in exchange, I'll find spots where the opponents make 9 high flush when I make ace high flush, right? And you end up winning a ton of chips in those scenarios. I think it's also probably a pretty good strategy in general, especially if your opponents will fight fire with fire and 4-bet you a lot, or if they're a little bit on the tighter side and they're playing a stronger range to begin with. And if that's the case, then you don't want to 3-bet because they're going to 4-bet you more. They're going to call more and then just not fold post-flop as often because they have good hands, right? So I don't 3-bet quite as much as most people, and I think that's probably a good strategy in general if you play well after the flop, which hopefully you all do if you've been studying a lot. Do you find you play tighter as you play more tables? No, definitely not. If you have to play tighter, then you're playing too many tables. You should just play good, fundamentally sound poker. What factors do you consider when deciding to bluff? Oh my goodness, I have a whole bluffing flow chart. I forget the link, but send us an email, support@pokercoaching.com. We'll find it for you. The bluffing flow chart. It lists everything you could possibly need to think about in terms of bluffing. Let's see if there's a link. Maybe there might just be a straight link I can send to you. Let's see. Can you imagine someone coming in here and saying, it sounds like I'm a Ponzi scheme because I am not bragging about how good I am at poker? What are people thinking? All right, there you go. pages.pokercoaching.com/bluffing flowchart. Go there, get that. Okay? Bluffing flowcharts on YouTube as well. Yeah. Best way to avoid chips when you've amassed a big stack. You don't need to avoid flips. That's the thing. That's the thing you got to realize is that you are going to inevitably flip. The way you win is by winning pots that don't belong to you. Good example of me the other day in that 10K right off the bat where I raise jacks, somebody 3-bet me, I rip it in, out of position. Very standard play. Very standard play. If you do not rip it in there, you're not going to win at poker tournaments. A lot of people, though, call, see the flop, and go from there. And the thing is, when you shove, your opponent folds out king, queen, king, jack, king 10 suited, ace X suited, right? All these hands have 30, 35, 40, 50% equity against you. And by shoving, you take all of their equity away, and it goes to you for free. Now, of course, whenever they have aces, kings, queens, they call and you lose. When they have 10s, they call and you win. Maybe they have 9s sometimes. Maybe they have ace, king, and ace, queen, and you're flipping. But all the other times, you win the pot. And that is very, very relevant, right? So, your goal is not necessarily to avoid flips, right? I think a lot of people think that they need to avoid flips because they flip and then they lose. But you don't lose every time. Sometimes you win and you get a whole lot of chips. You have to realize, though, that you're inevitably not going to have a lot of very, very big spots. I mean, thinking about myself in these $50,000 and $100,000 buy-in tournaments, I have not done particularly well flipping right before the bubble. And to be fair, I've only done it 10 times. If you flip the coin 10 times, sometimes you're going to lose 8 out of 10. And that's roughly what I'm looking at. And it's okay. I realize the game I've signed up for, and it's not going to deter me from making the play that I know is the best play just because I've ran poorly in the very short term, even though the short term for me is 2 or 3 years, right? Because I'm not playing a whole lot of $1,500, $1,000 buy-in tournaments. So I'm cool with it. Like I know what I've signed up for. A lot of people don't realize what they signed up for, though. They think that, they get to play the one main event of the year or whatever, and their goal is to just really not go broke. And if you flip, sometimes you go broke. And then they lose. It happens. You got to realize each tournament is just another tournament. I mean, in the main event of the World Series, so many people blunder by just like playing way too tightly, by folding way too often, by not wanting to risk their stack without the nuts. I mean, hey, maybe I blundered. I don't think I did. I think I played it fine. But in the main event, I opened under the gun in day one, maybe 6 hours in. Tight player 3-bets me. Loose aggressive player 4-bets. Tight player 3-bet me from like hijack seat, or from low jack seat. Then hijack, loose aggressive player 4-bet. Only loose aggressive player at the table. And I had about 150 big blinds, and so did they. I had queens. That's a nasty spot. Because if I call, sometimes the initial 3-better re-raises with aces and kings, right? If I 5-bet and anybody jams me, I'm miserably unhappy. If I fold, that's not great. But I think fold's the right play. Because all the other options are bad. So I folded. The 3-better folded and the loose aggressive player won the pot. But that was the first 4-bet of the day. Only 4-bet of the day, actually. You ever played 150 big blind poker all day and saw no 4-bets? I don't know about that. It seems a little bit nitty. But it's probably just a good fold. I talked to a bunch of other good players like, yeah, you just fold. Such is life. But that's an example of a spot where I did not flip, because I'm not convinced it's a flip, right? I mean, if I 5-bet and they fold, yeah, that's great. But the problem is when they do get in that spot, they have literally aces or kings or ace-king. And that's really, really bad. It just kind of sucks going from top 10 stack to the middle of the field after losing 3 flips. Why does that suck? Whenever you get unlucky, you're going to lose. Get used to it. You're struggling with day 2s of tournaments. You find yourself coming in top 20%, struggling day 2. Maybe because your loose aggressive style doesn't do well when people are shallower stacked. Yeah, maybe not. You got to realize that you need to play good, strong, or good fundamentally sound poker, right? And if you're playing too loose, too aggressive, too splashy, that does not work when you're playing short stacked at all. There's a good chance you play well shallow stacked and horribly deep. Well deep stacked and horribly shallow stacked. So study shallow stack poker. Check out the tournament masterclass at pokercoaching.com. We have gigantic sections on that. It's unfortunate when you lose the 50Ks and win the 5Ks. Yeah, I mean, that happens. I mean, it's like the running joke in poker tournaments. If you win all the $500 tournaments and win all the 10Ks, you're going to have a good year. And if you lose all the 10Ks and win all the $500 tournaments, you're going to have a bad year. I actually went back and looked at my results. This was probably 6 or 8 years ago when I was playing a ton. Probably when I was in a downswing trying to make myself feel better. And pretty much every single year, I won about 100 buy-ins, which is ridiculous if you think about it, to win 100 buy-ins every year for like 8 years or whatever it was. And some years I was up $2 million. Other years I was down $300,000, despite being up 100 buy-ins. The problem is the buy-ins were all over the place. Back then, I was playing $500 tournaments to like $10,000 buy-in tournaments. That was basically as big as they get back then. And you lose the 10Ks, you're going to lose, right? You win the 500s and you lose the 10Ks, you're going to lose, even though you can be up a bunch of buy-ins. And that's the game you signed up for. Realize that. I mean, obviously, I'd rather play like bigger in general, or at least the same buy-in on average, right? I mean, if I could play on average 5K every day or whatever, I'd be thrilled, right? Nice, casual, grinded up, no variance, win your 100 buy-ins a year, call it a day. But that's not how it works. There's not the same buy-in tournament every day, and that induces a ton of variance. What did I think about insert any main event hand? I don't know. I didn't watch it. I had a ton going on during this World Series of Poker. If I was not playing poker this summer, I was recording content. If I wasn't doing that, I was sleeping. I recorded about, I don't even know, 50 hours of YouTube videos for all of you with a bunch of poker coaching coaches. That'll be released over the course of the next year. I hope you enjoy it. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I heard there was like insane amounts of tanking. If you don't like tanking, call the clock. You know, if your opponent doesn't mind, such is life. You got to realize the companies producing the show don't pay the players. The players have to pay to be there. If the company making the show wanted to pay the players money to show up, then they can feel allowed to implement various rules where They can punish slow play, right? If the players have to pay to show up, though, and the players don't agree on these various rules, then that's kind of lame for the companies to think that they should be able to make people play quicker or whatever. So, maybe they start doing the main event with no rake. Every televised event with no rake, maybe. That could be cool. Maybe they do it where they pay everybody $500 to show up. $10,000 goes into the prize pool. You only got to pay $9,500. Then you can start to do whatever you want, right? Unfortunately, they're not going to do that, though. Okay, let's see. Are we still working with Faraz? I don't know. I don't think so. Faraz decided to make his own training site, such as life, have fun, enjoy yourself. Good luck. Glad that we helped him get on his way. Your video helped you take 3rd place at the lodge. Nice job. Oh, 3rd place for the day. Good. Fine, good. You should buy the book I have in the background. Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker. It answers a lot of these questions, that's for sure. Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, the essential guide. Sometimes you go card dead. Yes. Sometimes you go card dead. You don't know why the main event didn't have a shot clock. It's a tough thing because you got to realize players are playing for many, many millions of dollars. You really, really, really do not want to tell people when you get deep in a tournament after you've played 10 days straight pretty much, that now you're going to have 30 seconds to make a decision for millions of dollars. It's kind of lame, really. Now, to be fair, if I, Jonathan Little, was at the final table, I'd be clocking them left and right. If you're going to take more than 45 seconds on any decision, you can be sure, since I know I don't need that time, I'm going to clock you so hard, and that is going to rattle so many people, and that is going to, it's going to give me a big edge. But their opponent did not do that, so fine, whatever. How do you deal with Collusion Online? You don't need to worry about Collusion Online, in my opinion. I think, well, if you're playing No Limit Hold'em, the value of Collusion is minimal because you don't get to see all that many cards. Collusion is very relevant in games where you get to see a lot of cards, like Omaha 8 or better, for example, limit games. In no limit games, Collusion's not so relevant. In games with 2 cards, Collusion's not so relevant. As you play smaller stakes and bigger fields, Collusion's also way less relevant. You do have to be worried about Collusion in tournaments that have 50 people, because then, if you're playing as a team of 12 people or something like that, then obviously if 4 of them make a final table, they can start to really lean on you and force you to fold way too often. But Collusion's not that big of a deal, especially in cash games. It's almost irrelevant. The edge you can get is minimal in 2-card games. Simple as that. Okay, this is going to sound bad. I don't know where the person's coming from who asked me this question, but most people want to look for an excuse for why they are losing. They're losing and they want to know why. And they're looking for anything to blame, anyone to blame. People blame their YouTube poker coaches because they follow their advice and they lost, so it's your fault. My fault. It's my fault that you decided to bluff today and you lost, right? Fine. If that's your mindset, if you're looking for something to blame, then such is life. If you're losing online, I can tell you the reasons. There's really only 2 major reasons you're losing online. The first is you're not as good as you think you are. The second is the rake is probably too high. That's it. Collusion is big in the sit and goes. Yeah, well, don't play sit and goes. Sit and goes have been dead for, since we killed them a long time ago. I had a site a long time ago. You all may not know this. Before poker coaching was poker coaching, it was called Float the Turn. That's not a good site name because it brings up a bunch of stuff about plumbing whenever you Google it. So before that, we had a site called Sit and Go Icons because we were egotistical idiot children. And, we were a few of the best sit and go players in the world. We taught people how to play sit and goes a little bit too well, and then sit and goes died because sit and goes are actually not all that hard. We learned to beat an easy game. We made a bunch of money from it. We killed the sit and goes, and the game is done. Now, you can still beat it at the small stakes. It's a great way to turn $50 into 10,000. For sure. Definitely a good way to turn 50 into 2,000. Very nice, easy, consistent way. But you can't turn 10,000 into $1 million all that easily playing sit and goes. You got to find something else once you get to the small/medium stakes. just because the game doesn't exist and the game is tough. And, you know, for all you're saying, maybe people collude. Who knows? I don't know. So anyway, that's that. But you got to realize if you're losing, the answer is not because you're playing against bots or they're colluding against you or you're unlucky on Sundays or the site is rigged. The answer is you're probably not all that good at poker and or the rake is too high. That's it. That's why almost everybody loses at poker. The habitual time taker should be pointed out to the floor person. Let the floor person fix it. An easy way to call the floor's attention to them is to keep calling them over to your table and saying clock. That's how you do it. Oh my God. One time it was me and Scott Seaver and this other guy in a $10,000 buy-in turbo tournament. It was supposed to be 5-handed, I think. Some EPT stop in France, I think. And me and Scott play fast. And this other guy, the young guy, I don't know who this guy was. He was going absurdly slow on every decision. So we clocked him every single decision. The floor eventually came over and told the guy he had 10 seconds to act per action. And he told the dealer, if this guy takes more than 10 seconds, kill his hand. Because we alerted the floor. And that sucks for that guy because he was being egregiously slow. Now, to be fair, imagine he sits at a table 3-handed, and he thinks it's a bad table because he has Jonathan Lill and Scott Seaver at it. I thought the guy was probably just some good online kid who was just really slow for some reason. But imagine he does think he's way worse than me and Scott Seaver. Let's just pretend. He should play slow. He should play as few hands as possible. And you do that by being dealt as few hands as possible. But if you do it egregiously, people will get annoyed and they will clock you. And now this guy went from having, 22 seconds per hand to 10 seconds per hand, which actually is really, 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 really little amount of time. And that was really bad for him. And it's not good. It's not good. I mean, this came up actually on the bubble of the $50,000 buy-in tournament at the World Series that I min cashed, where I was kind of short. 2 other people at my table were kind of short. And they give you 30-second shot clock in the $50,000 buy-in tournaments. All the players agreed this is definitely good for the game, et cetera, et cetera. So we all agree, well, we mostly all agree that shot clocks are good, so we play with the shot clock. And you're not allowed to take your full 30 seconds, even though they give you 30 seconds on the bubble. Did you know that? If you take your full 30 seconds in every single spot on the bubble, they will not give you 30 seconds anymore. So what do? Well, sometimes you got to take 15, sometimes you got to take 30, sometimes you got to take 22. You certainly take on the longer side, but you cannot take the full 30 seconds every time, or they will take away your time. So, kind of like that guy against me and Scott Seaver, you can go a little slow, but you can't go super slow. And if you go super slow, you will be maximally punished. If you go kind of slow, you'll probably get away with it. People are saying the guy at the final table of the World Series took his time a lot on 2 key decisions, and then otherwise he played pretty fast. Fine. I have no problem with that. I think that's actually how it should be. As long as you are very fast most of the time, but when you have a real decision, you actually get a second or 2 to think about it. A minute or 2 to think about it even. It's fine. Now, 20 minutes, I don't know about that. Especially in something where the delay is, let's say, 30 minutes. Could you imagine drawing out a hand? Well, making a hand take 30 minutes because you know that somebody in the audience is going to signal to you 30 minutes later that, hey, you're good. That would be ridiculous. Is 5% rake online reasonable? Yeah, it's probably fine. As long as it's capped. All right, I have to go. We have a webinar for poker coaching members. We're going through a common cash game spot today. I'll read you the hand. In an online 1-2 cash game against competent opponents with a 100 big blind stack, action folds to you in the low jack. What is your strategy? Which hands do you raise with, is what it means. Tell us all the hands you're raising with. Then, suppose you raise to $5, the big blind calls. Flop comes king, 10, 5. What do you do? Which hands are you betting? Which hands are you checking? And how much are you betting? How much are you checking? You have to go through and break your hand down into premium hands, draws, marginal made hands, and junk. Believe it or not, king, 10, 5 is not a board you should bet 100% of the time. A lot of people think that you should bet 100% of the time on king, 10, 5. Absolutely not. You got to have some checks. Let's say you bet $7 in the big blind calls, turns to 3 of hearts. What do? This is actually a turn spot where it's very easy to over bluff. Very, 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 very easy to over bluff. You have to be very cautious over bluffing on the king, 10, 5, 3 board because you have a lot of gut shots. You have a lot of open-ended straight draws. Way too many. You also have a lot of junky underpairs that may want to bluff. So, got to be a little bit careful there that you don't over bluff. Then, let's say you bet 35 bucks. You pump it up with a good, strong, polarized range. The river calls. I'm sorry, your opponent calls. River comes a 5 of diamonds, pairing the bottom card. What do? This is actually a spot where you're going to bet a lot. A lot. Why? Because you actually have a lot of nuts here. And if you were structuring your range intelligently on the turn, you don't actually have a whole lot of busted draws. Now, it is, again, a little bit easy to over-bluff here if you bluff every busted draw. You have a hand like Ace-Jack on King 10, 5, 3, 5. You may have to check it back, for example. Some ace highs may want to check it back. But a lot of other hands are going to get to bet here. You may say, what about your 10s? You should not bet your 10s on the turn. So anyway, we're going to go through that spot in just a minute at pokercoaching.com. If you're a Poker Coaching member, hop over there. It should be right on the dashboard. You can get in there. We'll study that very common spot that comes up in cash games today. So that's going to be it for today. Hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, do me a favor. Click the like and subscribe buttons below. Make the most of your week. You only have 1 week of July 25th, 2022. So let's make the most of it. Actually, I should probably say, I'm not going to do a little brain fuel for a while. Why? Because I'm going to Florida next week to play poker tournaments. Then I'm still going to be there the next week playing poker tournaments. I have 10 days of poker tournaments in Florida at the Hard Rock. I'm selling action for those tournaments, by the way. You can check that out at pocket5s.com. I'll post a link right here in the chat. Some of it's almost sold out. I posted it like an hour ago, and some of it's almost sold out, so that's good. That's good. So you can get some action there. No markup if you feel inclined. Giving some sweats to people. People ask, why are you capping some of it at $10 buy-in only? So that anybody can get the piece if they want. So I'm not going to be here for those 2 weeks. And then I'm going to upstate New York with my family for 3 weeks. My wife has this idea that we're supposed to go upstate every year for 3 weeks and stay in the country. And I get to be the babysitter. So I'm going to be babysitting kids for 3 weeks. Upstate. It's going to be fun. We'll go fishing and hiking and playing farms and riding bicycles and playing baseball and kicking soccer ball, whatever. We'll have a lot of fun. So that'll be good. And then after that, I'll be back. After that, I should be home for a while. I'm not going to play a lot of poker for a while. I was actually going to play poker right after that trip was over, but I realized I have life stuff happening. Somebody's getting married. Somebody's having a birthday party. There's a lot of stuff happening. And so anyway, I'm not playing poker for a while after that, so we'll be back. We'll be back shortly after that. What is Pocket Fives? Pocket5s.com used to be, well, it still is, a poker forum. But they branched out, and now they have staking, and they have a lot of good players selling action there. It's super easy. They make my life super easy. It's really easy for me. If you tell me I can sell action and all I have to do is tell you how much to sell and you sell it every time, easy. I always sell there, no markup, 0%. I don't buy pieces of people when they charge egregious markups, and I don't expect you to do the same either. Pocket Fives takes no rake or anything. They take no fee. They have no fees for you to buy action on the site, which is great. I don't know if that's going to keep up for forever. As soon as it stops, I'll stop selling action there because I want to make sure you have profitable buying opportunities. Imagine I could sell at no markup, but they charged you 10%. Now it's like I'm selling at 1.1, and then that starts to take away a lot of your edge. A lot of the other staking sites out there charge 10% rake or 5% rake or something. And hate to break it to you, if you're paying markup and they're taking rake on top, you're not going to win. But I like Pocket Fives because they charge no fees for anybody. They don't charge me a fee. They don't charge you a fee. They're not making any money yet. Maybe they will one day. Maybe they'll turn on fees at some point. I mean, I presume they have to at some point. But right now it's free. If it's free, might as well take the action. Free as free can be. So anyway, that's going to be it. Good luck. Have fun. Make the most of your week. I will see all of you when I see you. If you're in Florida, say hello. There's a chance we do a breakfast or something. If you're watching this and you're a Poker Coaching member and you want to come to a breakfast at Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, sometime between like August 3rd and 10th or something like that, send us an email. Maybe we'll do it. If nobody sends me an email, we won't do it. Good luck. Have fun. Thank you for being here. Click the like and subscribe button. If you're a Poker Coaching member, I'll see you in the webinar right now. How did Deck of Degeneracy work out? Great. Still going. We're giving away a bunch of action for Florida, actually, there. So that'll be a lot of fun. Check it out, deckofdegeneracy.com. Goodbye.